In the wireless Bluetooth over-ear headphone market, there are few vendors quite as prolific as Edifier. Throughout 2023, they've been building out that already burgeoning portfolio. We've seen top-end, exciting releases with Snapdragon sound like the Stack Spirit. And today we're taking a look at one for the more budget-conscious, the WH700NB. The MSRP for this model is $49.99. Although there's currently a 10% off voucher on Amazon UK, and I've seen it drop as low as $35 throughout Black Friday, so it is worth keeping an eye on those deals. Despite the low price tag, Edifier haven't skimped out too much on the features with this model, giving you up to 68 hours playback with ANC switched off, 45 with it switched on. You've got environmental noise reduction using their AI algorithm, and there's gaming mode through the Edifier Connect app, as well as multi-point connectivity. They're available in 4 different colours: black, blue, grey and cream. And the drawback of this model compared with its big brothers, the likes of the 820 and the 950, is the absence of high-res codecs. This supports SBC only. Unfortunately, Edifier aren't giving you a carry case with this model. There's a USB A to C charge cable, the instruction manual, and that's about it for the accessories. From a look/design perspective, there aren't too many things that differentiate this or any other set of over-ears from something like the Sony 1000 XM5. They're probably one of the lightest sets which I've tested so far, and that is down in no small part to their slimline design, which is very evident when you compare it to the Haylou S35 ANC. They do feel a little bit rattly in comparison to the likes of the Haylou S35, which doesn't necessarily feel more premium, but everything did feel a little bit tighter. The hinges are constructed out of wire, plastic and aluminium alloy, but they're quite thin. Whilst this gives it a bit more flexibility, I do feel it contributes to them sounding and feeling a bit more rattly. Even so, it's expected at this price that they will cut some corners somewhere, and the build quality isn't sufficiently bad that it would put me off. In fact, it's more than good enough for a set of headphones at this price. The added flexibility that you get from these slightly looser hinges means that you can fold them up quite tight, making them rather portable. If your head is slightly on the larger side like mine, thankfully you've got quite a bit of adjustment in the headband, up to 11 clicks on each side, which gives you an additional 7 centimeters. At first, I was a little bit disappointed by the cushioning on the ear cups, which seemed a little bit soft and the recoil quite fast. And it was a similar story with the headband. In fact, that was even thinner and softer. But in reality, this was not something that I noticed as soon as I put them on my head. Now, fit and comfort are subjective. It's different from person to person. But one thing that I can say about the WH700NB is that the clamping force doesn't seem to be anything like as tight as some of their contemporaries. So the Haylou S35 and the One Audio A10, for example, they fit a lot tighter. And if you had a larger head, like I have, that could sometimes cause a little bit of discomfort. That definitely isn't the case with the WH700s. They have a little bit more give, and the overall widest point as well isn't anything like as narrow as those previous models, as I mentioned. So if your head is on the larger side, then the WH700 is possibly going to be a better choice for you. The ear cup openings are tall and oval shaped, measuring around 64mm from the top to the bottom, with a width of around 40mm. Again, I thought this might be problematic for my slightly larger than average ears, but in reality, for prolonged use, I didn't really notice it at all. A bigger disappointment was the absence of the L&R printed on the ear cups to tell you which side is which. For that, you have to look a little bit closely towards the hinges. From an ergonomics and a fit perspective, the WH700NB tick all the boxes. They aren't too obtrusive, and the clamping force is just right. That makes them really comfortable for prolonged use. The controls are all on the right cup, and they're actually pretty straightforward. You've got a plus and minus button, which when pressed once act as your volume control, but if you hold them down, then it will cycle through your tracks. The button in the middle, when held down for 3 seconds, switches them on. Tapping it will play and pause and conduct your call functions. And then you've got a Bluetooth button, which actually cycles through your active noise cancellation modes. By default, when you're cycling through those active noise cancellation modes, it will toggle through all 3. However, you can change this in the Edifier Connect app. So if you don't like to have active noise cancellation off in there, you can take that out. Wouldn't say this is quite button customization, but it's a pretty handy feature. Tapping that button twice activates gaming mode. Again, this is something that you can also do through the Edifier Connect app. Latency out of the box isn't bad even without this being toggled. Certainly if you're watching YouTube or other videos, then lip synchronization is there or thereabouts. For casual gaming, it's not quite as good as you would expect, but toggle that gaming mode on and I think it will be fine for the majority of users. If you're just playing PUBG or Roblox, Genshin Impact on your phone, not doing something serious on your PC, then I think it will be good enough for you. Holding that Bluetooth button will put them into pairing mode and you'll get a flashing LED next to it to denote that it is pairing. The buttons aren't too clicky and they're texturized as well, so if you do slightly lose your orientation, you can feel for it and just about make out the plus or the minus, so I think that's quite a useful feature as well. That LED also acts as a charge indicator when you've got them plugged in and charging, which again is pretty useful. And they support the quick charge feature, which gives you 8 hours of playtime from just 10 minutes of charge. Again, I think this is a really useful addition. The battery life on the 700NB is pretty much middle of the road, giving you up to 68 hours with active noise cancellation off and 45 hours with ANC on. This is about, as I said, middle of the road compared to a lot of the competition. It falls quite a way behind the Creative Zen Hybrid Pro, which is the leader here really in its field, but they also cost a lot more as well. So when you're comparing it with the likes of the One More Sonoflow and the QCY H3, which are pitched at around a similar price, it's a similar level of battery performance. It's definitely enough for the average user, and throughout my tests over the last couple of weeks I've managed to get around about the 68 hours. On one occasion it exceeded it, don't ask me how, I have no idea. On another occasion it felt a little way short, but that was the test where I was doing quite a few calls and also testing out the different ANC modes repeatedly, and those things will obviously drain the battery quite a bit, so temper your expectations accordingly. But I think a pretty decent battery performance according to the expectations set in the marketing material. Active noise cancellation on this model surprised me actually. I took it out in a few different scenarios to test. Outdoors on the daily commute, it did remove most of the kind of traffic noises, or reduce them at least when you've got no music playing. Moving to a train station or an underground station, you will still hear the sounds of the trains. It doesn't block them out altogether. However, again, for sub $50 set, it's more than adequate. I've included some binaural samples so you can hear the differences between transparency mode and ANC.
Noise cancellation. Ambient sound.
And the transparency mode again is okay on this model. It's nothing outstanding, but it's pretty good. I've found that there are very little differences in terms of the ANC performance across pretty much any of these budget sets of headphones. But one nice thing that you've got with the Edifier app is the ability to tailor that level of transparency, which can be useful depending on the scene. As you'll have seen in my recent review of the X3 Lite, Edifier Connect isn't the most fully featured app, but what it does really well. The first of 3 swipes allows you to control active noise cancellation. You can toggle it on, off, transparency, and then 3 settings within that transparency level, as we said, giving you a bit more control if it isn't working well enough for you. So onto the audio, and first let's have a look at the hardware and the codecs. You've got 40mm dynamic drivers, pretty much industry standard in headphones of this type. You've only got the SBC codec, and this is where it differentiates from those models up, the 820 and the 950, which support LDAC. It doesn't impact too negatively on the level of detail that you're getting. This isn't necessarily a detail oriented sound. It's a fun, boomy V-shaped sound signature, which is definitely tuned with that consumer sound in mind. Taking a look at that frequency response measurement, as you would expect, it's a V-shaped sound with a boomy but impactful bass. The bass bleeds into the mids a little bit, but that does give the sound a little bit more warmth. The sub bass is really strong, and you can hear some distortion on bass heavy tracks. That can be remedied using the classical preset in the Edifier app, which I'll show you a little later on. In the trebles, you've got enough there to give bite and texture to percussion, but it's not enough for it to sound fatiguing for prolonged use. The mid-range, as you can see, is quite recessed, so some instruments and male vocals in particular can sound a bit more set back from the mix. Comparing the sound to the Haylou S35, you can see they're peas from the same pod really. The 700NB has more bass depth and rumble, whereas the S35 has a punchier bass. There's a little less mid-bass bleed on the S35. On rock tracks in particular, that can help male vocals a little. The trebles on the S35 are equally non-fatiguing, although they do roll off a little earlier. The bouncy, energetic sound signature of the WH700NB definitely translates better to genres like pop, house, EDM, techno, etc., where the musicality and the nuances of different instruments are less important than energy and vibrance without too much fatigue. If you want to tweak the sound, you do have some options within the Edifier Connect app. There are 4 available presets: classic, pop, classical and rock. See defaults to classic. Rock and pop are quite similar, as you'll see from the frequency response measurements in a moment, but classical is probably the most useful because it eases off on that sub bass a little bit and makes the sound just a little more lighter and cleaner. Here's a visual comparison, and once again gonna hand you over to a binaural sample toggling between each of the different presets.
It's just in my head. It's only not me. It's just in my head. Just in my head.
As you heard there, with the default classic preset, things could sound a little bit congested in the lower frequencies, and it's a similar story for all the others except for the classical preset, which really opens the sound out a little bit. So if you don't have the ability to use wavelet, then this is probably my preferential EQ. There's no custom EQ within the app, unfortunately, but if you're an Android user and you've got access to wavelet, remember you can always use that. And you've also got the ability to tune with AutoEQ to your desired target. It's pretty simple really. Head over to ReganCipher.squig.link, select your model from the left hand side, select your target. Here I've selected the diffuse field target. Move into equalizer, again on the left hand side. Punch in your various different points at different frequencies, then click AutoEQ and then export for wavelet. You've got to get that file from your PC to your phone. Usually I email it to myself. Then head over to wavelet on your phone, tap import, select the file, and then you'll see a visual representation of the equalizer appear on your screen. Don't forget to toggle AutoEQ on, and then away you go. Your equalizer setting is loaded onto your phone. So now let's take a listen to the call quality This is how you can expect the WH700NB to sound on your calls when you're in an indoor environment and you've managed to reduce all the ambient sounds around you. Let's say you're using these to work from home and there's nobody in the house at the time, or you have to make an important call like an interview or presentation. You've managed to reduce all sounds around you or go into a quiet room. This is how you can expect them to perform. As always, coming up, we've got a few real-life samples to test the environmental noise reduction and see how it copes in a busy outdoor and indoor scene. So, this time, testing the Edifier WH700 in a busy outdoor scene, replicating how you can expect these to work on your calls on the daily commute. I've got a real mixture of traffic sounds, basically doing the daily commute myself here. So this is how you can expect to perform when you're walking to work, school, college, etc. Every so often I get lucky and I get a little bit of wind whilst I'm out and about for a walk. And there we go, another gust of wind right on cue, and a load of rain in my face as well. But hopefully this has given you some idea of how the WH700NB perform in wet and windy conditions. So, testing Edifier WH700NB for indoor calls. I mean, the usual is the coffee shop in the UK. It's a weekend, so it is inevitably quite busy. You've got lots of tables here, all of which are full, and there's lots of interesting chatter. There's the sounds of the baristas making coffee, there's the staff here preparing food, and there's music playing as well. So I'm very interested to hear how the 700NB perform on your voice calls.
The 700NB do have multi-point connectivity, so you can connect to two simultaneous devices, and I found that this worked really well, and the switch over from device 1 to device 2 when you paused and then played the other, or you had to take a call, something like that, I found that it was very quick. Unfortunately, in the Edifier Connect app, you don't get to see which devices you're connected to, which is the case with some vendors, but they haven't included it here. That would have been a nice to have, but overall, the implementation is pretty good. Overall, it's a good offer from Edifier, and it definitely bridges the gap in their portfolio between their higher end and their kind of ultra low budget. You're getting lots of features, good active noise cancellation, decent on calls, and fun, punchy sound for a very competitive price. Do give the video a like if you found it useful or you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more tests and comparisons on over-ear headphones as well. We've got the QCY H3 coming up, as well as the Creative Zen Hybrid Pro. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. It's ReganCipher signing off.